Hello, everyone. Um, in the midst of all the summer, well, it feels like the summer, even though we're just entering it, yeah. Um, well, yeah, the heat is rising outside, and I would say that the book that we've prepared for this session's discussion, the heat rises in that as well. Yeah, look over your shoulder, make sure you know what's happening. Anyway, without further ado, great pleasure to welcome back. It's not often that we have authors back because there are, as we know, if you're an avid crime fiction reader, well, there are so many fabulous authors to choose from, but when there's somebody whose work just strikes a chord and when their publisher says, please could they come back, and you just think, great, it's like carrying on the conversation. So Amen Alonge, thank you so much for our time together.
Thank you.
It's been a year or so since we last saw each other here online, although we have spoken in person. But I just wonder, how is everything with you a year on since we last spoke?
Just as wonderful, just as wonderful. My son is, 2 and, a lot more energetic now and a lot more, so it requires more energy even for me too. But, beyond that, everything is going really well and happy. Just, good, 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 good. Yeah.
Fabulous. That
Yeah.
makes me so happy, but this makes me so happy as well.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. So second in the Pretty Boy, will it be a trilogy? I usually ask this
Yes.
at the end, so I can say
Yes.
second in the trilogy. That's
Yeah.
great.
Second and trilogy.
Wonderful,
Yes.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would recommend this, but if you haven't read the first in the series, oh, treat yourself and have both. Because seriously, I just think, what you do with structure and what you do with character, um, I think, as I say, I think for people who read a lot of crime fiction, I think you've given us something that makes us think a little bit differently. You've
Oh, thank you.
provided some characters that are, not the same old, and it's a refreshing, if not menacing read.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Um, it was published in April
Yes.
2023
Yeah.
by the fabulous publishers Quercus.
Yes.
You take us to London Gangland. And for anybody who didn't hear the first time we talked or who wasn't familiar with your writing, I wonder, could you just tell us what drew you to writing gangland, and not another kind or style?
Yeah. I think for me, it sort of started with the character, and the character was first and foremost, and the world the characters lived in, because like I was fascinated, like, because when I first moved to London, and just, I lived a sort of, sort of a sheltered life,
Yeah,
and in those interactions I'll have with people that did not live a sheltered life, I was always, 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 always intrigued by their lives and the choices they made, and focusing on one of those characters, and because of what I like, because I like thrillers and I like action and I like pace, sort of lends itself, because that's the life that they sort of live, Gangland, and I am very happy with the title Gangland, because that's what it is, but it's real lives in a particular place in London. Do you know what I mean? So it's real life there, and these are like real things that happen, not to the extent, because lots of people die in my book, and hopefully not many people die, but and so that's what I enjoyed. I just like that
yeah,
world that just is just right there. It's just right there on the level, on the surface, but we don't interact with it, but it's going on every day. And I just wanted to pick one character out of there that wants to get out, but also kind of doesn't want to get out. And yeah, I know.
yeah.
And that sort of like, thing of, and he loves it. It's his home, but there's danger at every corner. And that lends itself to, I suppose, Gangland. Yeah.
Yeah, I love what you say about Pretty Boy. The feeling of, well, I got even more so when I read this one. He's almost like a Robin Hood type.
Yes.
He's involved in some pretty grim stuff, but he's got a moral compass.
Yes.
You know, that helping people that maybe aren't in a good way, or making the choice to do the right thing.
Thing.
I really appreciate that about him, that he is not one dimensional.
Yes.
You know,
Thank
and
you.
yeah, and well, there was an aspect in here that we must discuss. You being a writer, me being a
Yeah.
reader, I
Yeah.
think, you know, we will get to that. But second book in,
Yeah.
and I wondered, I have a couple of questions around this, it being the second book in. First of all, without giving too much away, where do we find him, you know, in relation to the first novel? Where is he now?
So in relation to the first novel, A Good Day to Die, the day is over for him. And but as with every story, I always say, to my friends, and the movies we watch and the books we read, it's only finished because that's when the writer chooses to stop. Something happens tomorrow. Something always happens tomorrow.
Yeah.
And especially with something like this that's just so high stakes, something is going to happen the next day. And there are a lot of things I drop through the book that you just think, okay, this possibly couldn't get complete in a day, but because you were so focused on Pretty Boy and his actions in the day, you sort of let that brush over you, like, that'll happen somewhere else. But those are the things that manifest themselves. And because of how I've laid it, it happens, the book takes place, actions or matters before the day, A Good Day to Die, and afterwards. So what you sort of find out reasons why a lot of the things that happen in the first book happen.
Mhm.
They've already, like somebody, the pipe has been laid, and all we're doing now is just following the pipe backwards and then following it through the day. And then you see how everything that happened in the first book and the second book I go into, it's all connected. It's all, everything, it's all rolled into one. Everything that people say, characters that you meet for one page, for 2 pages, they are important. And I just like that. So I think for A Good Day to Die, it's like you can read it and think, okay, well, wow, that's good. It's over, but does he really survive? And then you come into the next one, and then you just keep going like that. Yeah, and
Yeah.
so that's where I have it. Yeah.
And so, I mean, to me, again, it's a real crisscross pattern. You know, you're writing. It's not,
Yeah.
as you say, it's not the story ends and a new one starts.
Yeah.
There's threads that run back and forth. And in the way that you've created your novels, did you write them in a different way, or have you written them 1, 2, and then 3 will be coming? And if you have, has this second book behaved itself? Because some authors, you know, they have that second book syndrome. What's your experience been?
I think, in the main, it, it has sort of behaved itself, but I think a lot of supporting characters have not behaved themselves, and which I enjoy. And, they have decided that, and I always said this, and it became more true in the second book, in that all these characters in the book, they're all real people. They all have real lives. They're smart, they have resources. And the only reason why, to an extent, that Pretty Boy is the central character is because I've chosen them. All the other characters are central characters in their own mind. So they don't have to comply with Pretty Boy's story. They have their own stories going on that are going to connect with Pretty Boy. It can push him off, off his journey. It can help him on his journey. But all of these characters that we fall in love with, they all have their own ambitions and their own goals in the book. And it's like a real world in my head. It's just like I'm taking a snapshot of it. So
Yeah,
obviously I can't go into as much detail with some characters, but I'm going to leave you enough to know who they are and to know what they're going through and how it might affect. So yes, some characters didn't, and even some characters didn't comply to a certain degree, but I realized it made for a better story. So I'm like, oh, this is fun.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? This is fun. Let's go with it. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. I always find that really intriguing. How that happens. That, you know, many an author, you've got in your mind how people's lives will be playing out,
yeah,
and then the characters go, oh, wait a minute, actually. And yeah, and I think that must be exciting, for the author as well, to know that, you know, it's not just going to be as I plan it. You know,
Yes,
if I'm open, things can happen.
yeah, and I love that, and I think, it's I think, it might be that might be a bit difficult to give an advice for a first time author in that, you really want your story to be as crisp as possible, and
Mhm.
you don't really want the characters taking you off in tangents and stuff. So I do understand that you might just want to just create a neat story, but eventually, after a while, and after you just have a little bit more confidence, because I imagine your first book does come out, you do feel like, okay, I can actually do this, and then you sit down and you like let the story come out. I know A to B to an extent,
Yeah.
you know, so I'm just gonna let, and I realized that a lot of the characters who I really enjoy, like I really like when some characters I've written for like maybe like 5 pages or 2 chapters, people mention them and they really enjoy them because I really enjoyed them. It's like in my head they're living. I like them, but they're just not that much part of Pretty Boy story. But yeah, I am so happy when I am writing something and it just like this decision that I sort of made for the character and making it for Pretty
Mm,
Boy. Yeah, I'm making it for Pretty Boy's story. Like they wouldn't really do this. They would do something else. And then Pretty Boy has to react to that something else.
mm.
And that makes Pretty Boy more interesting because there's more for him, there's more friction.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I enjoy it that way.
I also like the writing style as well, how there are various chapters where we are in his head,
Yes.
which it's a wonderful place to sit, in the way he observes things and considers things. But then, you also chapters that are written, from that third person,
Person.
and looking out at those characters
Yeah.
as if looking through his eyes, although, things are happening when he is not there, of course, when,
Yeah.
he is elsewhere. But again, I think it moves the narrative around beautifully,
Thank you very much.
and the other thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost like there's two strands going on, and it's not until way, way through the book that they
Yes.
actually
Yes.
collide again. I am
Yes.
right, aren't I?
Yes. Yeah,
I've
you are.
not
You are.
missed.
No, no, you're all right.
Yeah,
Which, to be fair, was a tad bit of a problem for Quercus, in that the, you know, maybe because of the way, I write stuff and the way I enjoy stuff, I do like, I do tend to think that people just, if you engage, and if you believe in me, you know that it's going to come. Just that I probably push the envelope a little bit for when it actually comes together. You know, because you're like, okay, like, oh, I can see, oh, where's this going to work? Because you see both paths and you think it's going to cross now, but no, no, not now. No, not now. And because my belief is that even the people on the other path, they're just as good at what they do. And they don't exactly need a savior yet. They don't know they need a savior. They don't know they
mhm.
need Pretty Boy until Pretty Boy appears and like, oh my God, I need him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So,
yeah,
and even for the reader, I want you to go through that of those thinking, you know what I mean? Oh, okay, okay. Because they're trying to sort everything out themselves because that's who they are. They
yeah.
have, yeah, they have means. They believe in themselves. But it's just like at some point, the powers that, who you're coming up against, as I always say, nobody's a true villain in the book. Everybody has their reasons for doing what they want to do, and they all have a certain amount of ability, and eventually they're going to meet up against somebody that they cannot budge, and it's at that point where they cannot budge that Pretty Boy story comes in just naturally, and I would have built it in all the way that, oh, okay, and it sort of comes naturally, and then it sort of unfurls, and then you sort of like move on, and that's sort of how I like it. And I think for the third one, I am, probably given much away now in that I am going to try and bring Pretty Boy into the main story a bit earlier. I
Okay.
think just, and to be fair, I already know how I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? But the part I love about it is because there are already 2 books. So me bringing it in earlier, I have to make sure all the facts in the 2 book work.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so and it took me a while to think about like how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? Because the second book is almost like you can say it's like a two-hander,
Mhm.
the way it's framed. And I suppose Pretty Boy is the central character, so it's a bit like, yeah, it's maybe a two-hander, but You know what I mean? Less a two-hander, maybe a one and a half hander. You know what I mean? And that's what's going to happen in the third one, where it's more looking through Pretty Boy, but then there's another character that's going to be taking over, the other, because Alan Pierce, who's a former policeman turned leader of the largest drug distribution network in London, that he is the other in this book. And in the third book, there's going to be a different author.
Oh,
Yeah. So and then so it's just all that, and and I I am pleased about how it's going, to say the least. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. I can imagine, being the person that enjoys the way that you construct.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, well, you mentioned Alan Pierce, and I wondered as well the idea of you bringing in a character who used to sit on the other side,
Yes.
if we,
Yes.
if we draw up them and us kind of thing. Um, if and I also like that you say, no one is wholly evil.
Evil. Yeah.
That there's aspects to them, or there's reasons. What is it that you like that you have created? I mean, I know I can understand, Pretty Boy and just what an amazing, main protagonist. But Alan Pierce, what is it for you that makes this character so special?
I think that why I really like Alan Pace is that he honestly tries to do good. He just isn't as good a person as he thinks he is. And when push comes to shove, it's Alan first, which is fine for most people in the world. You know what I mean? And he sort of lived a cultured life. He was a really good policeman, and that sort of left. And he never had the chance or the opportunity to be sad about it. He just moved on.
Mm,
But it's always at the back of his head. But now he's working with the others. He's in charge of the largest drug
mm,
distribution in London, but he still hasn't gotten over. He still has those aspects of him of being a cop, of still looking down at people that do petty crimes, or he still has that, oh, I'm better than because I used to be a copper. But he's surrounded himself because of what he's doing with people that would look down on a copper, look down with that history. So it's that loggerheads. He's dealing with people every day that would not deal with him apart from what he can provide.
yeah.
And when he cannot provide that anymore, what happens?
Oh, ouch. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what happens to him? And so yeah, and I like, because with the first one, how he's introduced and has in his interactions with Pretty Boy, and you sort of realize that he's a good person to a limit. But then there are also lines that they drop in the book, in that, how good a person is he? Did he just see Pretty Boy as, oof, this is somebody that if I tie my hat, if I get close to him, I could this would be a wonderful ally. And that's just how he lives his life. He uses people to climb up the ladder, but he's fair. At least
Yeah.
he says he's fair.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You mentioned, again, this idea of you know, the the drug gang, circle, cartel, whatever we should call it. And there were some extremely hilarious moments I found in the way that they deal with each other. I mean, you
Mm.
bring this beautiful multi-ethnic mix.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good. I don't think there's anybody left out in this.
I know. Yeah.
And how, the banter back and forth with them. I giggled,
Thank you.
through those
That was the
pages,
intention. Yeah, thank you.
yeah, yeah, really good. And to,
Thank you.
because again, it's never funny, yeah, I think, when people are being dispatched. So I think to bring in the humor
Yes.
for us, I very much appreciated this. Um, we find out that Alan's favorite music, you let us know pretty early on,
Yeah.
Gorillas, Fatboy Slim, Daft Punk. And I
Yes.
wondered, to what extent does your music collection contain these, or are these just totally
No,
random?
these were my. I love them. I love them. Like I love them, and I always wanted to give, because I know it's a particular subgenre, and there's a certain perception of you might not think a black boy that grew up in Nigeria, listens to the sort of music or loves the sort of music, but I really did love it, and I really did want to like I didn't want to give it to a character that people would be like, that, I don't want to maybe question. But the fact that Alan listens to it, you don't question it because that's the sort of thing he might enjoy. And I love those. I used to, it's like it's a bit funny. Like on my Apple Music, I have Alan's playlist. I have Pretty Boy's playlist. I have
Yeah.
Oleg's playlist, and I have all of them. And I just listen and I add music onto it. And really, it's music that I enjoy. But it's just like I guess they're my character, so I definitely enjoy all those. And even more. I could, at some point I thought I was, I was getting, I was overdoing it by putting so much music on. I was like, I need to cut it back now. But yeah, so yeah, I definitely enjoy the genre and
Yeah.
I enjoy that music. Yeah,
I think it's a great element to bring in because music is so much a part of so many people's lives.
yeah,
So, why wouldn't they be elements, that but you mentioned a thing about the expectations that we would have of certain people, depending on their background, the kind of music that we would associate with them. But it takes me back to that, the heads, those gangland heads. And you almost do the same with them. That their reactions, you do all the atypical thing. I love the way you challenge the stereotypes.
yeah,
I just, it's like
yeah,
yes,
yeah. I enjoyed it, and especially because I think when I was thinking of writing this book, there weren't that many you know books that I read in that gangland genre that sort of serviced all those people
yes,
and
yes,
service all of them not as caricatures, not as, oh, they, if you live here, like these are all real people and real ambitions. And if you meet them for a few seconds and there's so much to them because, and that's what I just wanted people to know, like, what I mean, London is multicultural, maybe not as multicultural as the characters in the book because I do try as much as possible to
yeah,
stretch it out, but it's just like, I think they're just diverse, and I like that, and they're all in there, and they've all done what they've done to sit in this room.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Which I think, if I remember rightly, it's a church hall. You've got them sitting together in
yes, in
the
the first one,
first,
yeah, yeah, in
yeah,
the first place, yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. Um, Balancing the violence. I
yeah,
know I've asked you this before, but you still blow me away with, some of it really is, we've said ouch, and it is ouch. Um, but you manage not to overdo it. I think that's the thing. Are you aware of stopping yourself, or have you got this natural ability that says, that's enough, enough with the dead bodies for now?
yeah. I do think, luckily, eventually, I now have a natural ability to just like, that's it, or things can happen off screen or can be mentioned, or because I've already I've already done enough to make the reader aware that this is a dangerous place and this is a dangerous job and these are dangerous people. So I don't need to over egg it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
The reader is aware that at every corner, especially for these people, and because of what's happened, because the balance of power in the underworld has been twisted, and everybody's fighting for something. At any point, something could happen, and I think I had done that enough that and so it was just natural. Like I just focused on something, and it was natural. The people that died, there was a reason for it. The people that and the people that died off screen, there was a reason for it.
yeah,
And the important deaths or the important violent acts, are on there. And yeah, so hopefully, I'm a lawyer. People read my book after, I'm a lawyer, number one, and also I'm fairly chill. I'm a
yeah,
fairly relaxed person. So
yeah.
people are like, oh, you wrote a book, and even though it says a good day to die, people buy it, and halfway through I get a message on Teams like, oh my God, Amen, what's happening?
What have you
And I'm
done?
like, yeah, and so I still get that. People are like, oh my God, I can't believe that many people died. But it's like they say it, but they keep reading it, and it's just like they don't really think it's gratuitous, and that's what I don't want it to get to. I don't want to become like obviously I'll say Quentin Tarantino, but then I love Quentin Tarantino, so it's like, do you know what I mean? I don't mind it. I don't want it to be like Kill Bill, where like everybody just dying and dying and
Yeah,
dying over and
yeah,
over again. But I do like that, and I do like, I do like the sense of humor. I do like the world, and I hope people give me a little bit more latitude because because I've raised the stakes in that, you know, everybody's trying to fight for something that is very, 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 very important. And these are people that have serious means and have been cooked up for a while without any battle. So it's just like we're just there and it explodes.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
You said about the idea of our expectations of readers, the feeling like, oh, it's coming. You can feel
mm,
something coming, and you do that right from that first chapter.
thank you.
Where there's a business deal going down, and then it seems to go a little bit astray, and you just think this is just going to end so badly.
Yeah.
You raise us to that. I was waiting for, yeah, but anyway, enough of that. Um, if it's okay to ask this, because again, you've mentioned, the daytime job
Yes.
and what you do, and then you write these fabulous stories, and you're a dad as
Yes.
well, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And I just wondered, and like, are you strict with the time that you can, give to these different aspects of your life in order for you to be able to do all of that?
Yes. I think, at some point you have to become strict in some aspects, but luckily for me, I can write at every turn because when I actually sit down by the laptop to actually do the typing, I've written the entire thing. So I am writing on my way to work. I'm writing sometimes at the gym. Like I'm always writing on my phone. So
Okay.
I've constructed chapters and chapters and chapters on my phone. So all that, you know, all that time, you might think is like, even when I'm sitting down and watching a television show or not watching a television show, my wife is watching, MasterChef or whatever. I am
You
writing
just,
in my
yeah,
head,
it's, yeah,
so because without a shadow of a doubt, priority is my son, just being present and being there, and then after him is my wife being present and being there, and then comes being an author and being a lawyer and all these other things, and I am driven. I want to be the best at both, so I have to give both as much as I can. So the other things have to get chopped off. And the things I get have to get chopped off are focusing on a television show that I'm not that interested in. If I'm not that interested in it, I'll
yeah,
just let my wife continue watching it so we can
yeah,
sit beside each other. But
yeah, which,
I am
yeah,
writing, I am working, or just sometimes I don't listen to music in the gym because I'm writing or on my train journeys. That's all I'm doing. So luckily for me, I can right in those times. So at the moment, it hasn't become overwhelming. It's a book a year. So, I can sort of squeeze time as much as possible. And I am a deadline kind of guy. If you give me a deadline, I would find a way to get it done.
do you think do you think your legal background enables you to meet these deadlines, and also that ability to wrangle the different strands,
Yes.
you know?
I think it's one of those. I think my ability to do that led me to be a lawyer as well. So, it's a bit like, because I had that, I'm like, I can sort of like, I could put a lot of like fact, a lot of like, like narratives or, laws in my head and put it in a factual matrix instead of
Yeah,
like make it like work and like understand what things are happening. And so that's sort of like, so even like if there's something, like I have to do a particular like, tough research or I have to draft a particularly tough clause, I am not just doing it when I'm sat down or when I'm at work. On the way to the train, I am going through
you
the words
started,
in my
yeah.
head. Yeah, I am going through the words in my head, and I remember, okay, no, if I change this clause five is gonna have to change. What happens in the definitions? And it's all just there in my head. And so luckily I don't always have to have and I guess it works with my job. I don't always have to have my work laptop to work. Do you know what I mean? So actually when I'm actually present at work, I am getting all the things done that I need to do. So, there's never any case of like, work that outstanding or whatever, because I am on it,
Because
in
yeah,
my head. Yeah, I am on it in my head. And, again, I sort of came in, to Quercus with a reputation that I was, a lawyer or a lawyer to be at that point. So I do have a reputation to keep of not missing any deadlines. So like there's that, I've sort of created a rod for my own back there. And that is like I have, like
You've
I'm
got,
never gonna
yeah.
miss it. Yeah. So
I was going to ask if you would be so kind as to teach me how to do it, because
that's the thing. I don't even know how I do it. It's just, what I always say is that, I grew up in Nigeria, and the way you sort of learn for exams, fortunately or unfortunately, is you just cram a whole
uh-huh,
textbook.
yeah,
That's what you do. You just cram the entire textbook. And because of that, or maybe because I had a predisposition for that, in that I would remember pages, I would remember the words. And so I ended up doing quite well in school in that. So even like it goes to a point where I wouldn't even pay attention in class because I'm like, when it's time for the exam, I would just read it the night before. I read the entire textbook. And when I sit down, I know
yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
I just pour it out. The bad thing about that is that once you pour it out, I don't remember it tomorrow. So
It's gone.
it's
Yeah.
gone, it's absolutely gone. Well, who cares at that point? You know what I mean? But so that whole sort of thing, sort of like, I had to build that because, and the other part of that is that I was doing it for subjects I did not care about. So there wasn't the enjoyment. But absolutely love writing. So I am enjoying it as well. I absolutely love my day job. So I'm enjoying it as well. So I guess I built that muscle doing things that I didn't enjoy. So now that I'm enjoying it, it just seems
It's,
natural
yeah,
and it just
it's,
works.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's easy. It's not. Yeah, you're not struggling against anything. You can just go with it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Structure. Tell us if you would about the structure, because I think that I wrote myself a note. So it goes from day 1 to day 31,
Yeah.
and then from day 8 you introduce a timestamp as well. And I'm thinking, your the days I get,
Mm.
because again, it's just that lovely, that countdown, what's happening. But what are you doing with that timestamp? Why do we need the timestamp?
I think the timestamps are for days where things are happening, and and I just need to understand the time sensitive nature of those things. And that sort of, without giving too much away, he's traveling from one side of wherever he is to the other, and he has to do something. And in that, so you have to understand he's doing this here, and he needs to be somewhere else at a certain time. So
Mhm,
I've sort of like put everything. He needs to do everything in one night in a particular scenario that I can just off the top of my head that I know I use
mhm.
timestamps for. So so you're aware of everything, and you know that okay, all this has to happen before daylight. So that's where the time comes in. Because I imagine I can just write it. You as a reader could like understand that, time is flying. So, but the fact that there's a time, so I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, so, there's that added, it might just be at the back of your head, but then that when you're reading this chapter that says, oh, 200, that's when it's going to happen.
Yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean? You can tell like, okay, your head's about oh, this is it. You know what I mean? This is what's going to happen. And it's just a little bit of bringing over from A Good Day to Die. And A Good Day to Die was all timestamped, wasn't it? It was all like
yeah,
AR,
yeah.
So that's what I just enjoyed in
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
that as well.
I,
Yeah.
I, I mean, I think for me, it brings with it again that momentum. It's
Yes.
almost like this countdown, and it and
Yes.
it pushes the narrative. But yeah, coffee. Uh, Alan has his coffee machine. I'm very
Yeah.
envious.
Yeah.
Also very envious of Alan's wardrobe. I love the way you dress him. I think it sounds it's very
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, very nice.
Thank you.
And then again, when Alan goes, Alan with Franca, and then when Alan goes to see his lawyer, there's an abundance of coffee.
Coffee. Yes.
Does this speak to the amount of coffee consumed in your own life?
No, really, I don't drink any coffee. I've never drank coffee, but
Wow.
everyone around me at work drinks coffee. And I was, like, because I'm fascinated in people, I asked them, like, why do you drink this? What do you drink? What sort of machine do you use? And it's all those people that all this sort of, funny. I'm like, how much is your coffee machine? Oh my God, all that sort of things.
Yeah.
And it's just some people when they're particular about things, like Alan is.
Mm.
Alan is particular about what he wears. He's particular about his coffee. The extent to which they go to perfect it, to get the best of it,
Yes. Yeah.
and I like that trait in people, like this is his best coffee. It's not the best coffee, but this is what he thinks is the best
Yeah.
coffee. And he has gone to the ends of the earth to find it. And
Yeah.
I like that about him and other characters. Yeah, but I don't drink coffee. It's a bit of a thing. I don't drink coffee. So
If it's true for that, because there was another thing then about Pretty Boy, and it's Haribo Star Mix.
Oh yes,
Now,
yeah.
is that something that you do indulge in?
That was something I did indulge in
Have you
back in the day.
stopped?
I've stopped. I don't even know why. I don't. You know, these are I love that question. These are one of the things that I don't remember recently. I was thinking about it because I walked into a store and I saw Haribo and I'm like, oh, why am I not going for that? Why did I stop?
Yeah,
Yeah, but I went through a phase of, even the whole thing of, you make sure that Haribos are really soft, and I knew the places that did really soft Haribos. Yeah, so I was really, I was really into it, definitely. But then it just sort of stopped. I don't know why, but yeah, it stopped. Yeah, but yes, Haribo, yes.
yeah. I also like the way as well when he goes into a certain place and he realizes not everything as it should be.
Yeah,
Because of where they're not, and
because
what.
of whether or
Yeah,
not, yeah,
I love that.
yeah,
It's the Haribo that's led him that way.
yeah.
I am ashamed to say that both coffee and Haribo Star Mix
Uh,
do make up a big part of, especially my journeys to and from work in the
oh,
car.
I can imagine. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, with a good coffee and a bag of Star Mix. Anyway, family tensions.
yes,
Now it's not just one family. There's
yes,
layers of families
yeah,
and the problems that exist, both problems that they've created themselves, but
selves, yeah,
also problems that have been generated either by the authorities or by other gangs that.
forces, yeah,
Again, I wondered for you that notion of family,
yes.
regardless of if it's, people who, are on the wrong side of the law. It was an important concept for you to explore in this book.
Yes, it was. And again, I am from a relatively large family, but I'm from a relatively large polygamous family. And I grew up, you know, way family was, it was more competitive than it was more love.
Yeah,
And I always saw that, and I always saw the potential to create fiction, like friction, or even to create hatred, but coupled with a bit of love because you were still family.
yeah,
And I liked just pushing it. Like, what is the extent people will go to for family? What is the extent people will go to when wronged by family? And
yeah,
what would the extent people will go to avenge family? And
yeah,
all those touchstones are in here. You know what I mean? What will you do when somebody you think you love or somebody you thought loved you does something to you that you just like, wow, what do you do?
yeah,
What do you do when somebody you love gets hurt? Or what do you do when somebody you love betrays you? It's all in there. And you know what I mean? Or what will you do to find your family?
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's all, it's all there. And I do like it. And at some point, I can remember pitching this to somebody that it's the second book is almost a family drama.
yeah,
And so when it boils down to it, a lot of that, a lot of what is pushing the plot is what people is family. It's that whole thing. It's what people regard as family and what people do for family.
yeah,
And so yes, and I do like that. And yeah, because of my background and how I've grown up and what family was for me. Family was not, apart from I guess my mom and my immediate brother from the same mother, you know what I mean? But every other person that I would regard as family, it wasn't as neat
yeah,
as you think because it
yeah,
was always something else.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And I hope and I believe that that's something else. They never really thought it. I think we all just thought there was something else. We all thought there was something because we're from different mothers. But maybe there was nothing else. Maybe we just expected them to be nothing else.
uh,
And that's what I hope anyway, because we're all adults now. But yeah, that whole thing and just it's your brother, but you know,
yeah.
I think
And I think, in particular between Alan and Michael.
and Michael, exactly, that's it.
Oh,
Brothers, half brothers, yeah,
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 yeah. And again, I thought the dynamic in that as well of how, somebody who's been on, we'll say, the right side of the law
yeah.
and has moved on the other side, and then the other one that's been on the wrong side and he's, well,
Trying,
looks
yeah.
like he's trying
Looks
to
like
move
he's
out,
trying, yeah, I know.
but we all know politics are concerned.
I
Then
know,
is
exactly.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I love in this world that you've created that those lines of one side or the other, they just don't. They just
Yes.
disappear.
Yes, they do. And that's what I'm trying. And
Yeah.
it's going to be more in the second book because as I said, the first one is quite street level and that it follows Pretty Boy, he's quest for vengeance and it's, these are like soldiers. And the second one is like middle management, like where you regard as generals, like Alan and Michael and other people that were in the room in the church. Those are all the generals,
Mm.
we'd say. And then this next one focuses on politicians, focuses on business tycoons and how their businesses and how their lives and how their choices are entwined with what's going on. And yeah, and that is what I really enjoy about it as well, in that you see, so you sort of see them, and as you sort of said, politics is not, you know what I mean, politics is in this day. I'm sure there are good people in politics. I'm sure there are bad people in politics.
Yeah.
I mean, but that whole thing in that it's not all pure. Not every business owner is pure. Not, like it's all, and then, that's when you come and see it, and I'm like, oh, this is actually what's happening. So it's not just the guys down the block that are selling the drugs. Those are not the bad people. Do you know what I mean? Those are just the people that's just their life.
Yeah.
The other people as well involved in the root of it that you would absolutely think are stand-up people. You know what I mean?
Quite. I've been having this discussion recently about the idea of how we get, on the whole, we get more upset by those individual low level
Exactly.
crimes,
Yeah.
than we do these, these nationwide.
Exactly. Hmm.
We seem to, whether it's we can't deal with it, I'm not sure. It's something that I'm, keen to look into. I think next year with my students, I'm going to get them onto this and see where we get to.
Please do.
Now, so Pretty Boy is elsewhere. I think we're okay to say that because I think on the cover it says he's been,
Yeah.
yeah, and he had, well, this was such a warm moment for me in the book, despite part of it he has to go and do something. But the neighbor that he has and the way they share reading.
Yeah.
Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
I think, it was something that I like I always crave that. There's somebody to, especially when I was growing up and when I didn't have just somebody to just talk to, somebody just introduce, because like all of that I did, all those books I mentioned there, I found
Yeah,
myself. And and I just like there, and I know there are those people in the world, just from probably that it means so much to them, and they will want to share,
mhm.
that knowledge, that enjoyment, and that's why I created that character in Miss Lewis, and the fact that I just wanted the reader to know that there was a lot to Pretty Boy.
Yes,
You know what I
yeah,
mean? That there was a lot to
definitely.
him.
Yeah,
And just putting him in the room with somebody like that is just, honest to an extent, because we know she has a backstory. You know what I mean? And it's just a real person in that room, and just seeing how they interact when he doesn't have all those burdens of being Pretty Boy. Because he's not
yeah,
Pretty Boy when he's with her. He's
yeah,
who he is.
yeah,
He's how he was raised, and all the realness is there. And I just like that interaction, especially when they're talking about books and when they're eating, and when, and I like that. And I
yeah.
thought that was important for the reader.
Very, very much so, and all that is not said as well. I think
Yeah.
I think that was wonderful. And then this quirky, wonderful thing in the area where he's living, the sharing of the cat.
Yes, yes, yes,
I
yes, that
think
happened.
does he call the cat Madge or somebody calls the cat Madge, because
Yeah, and
the cat has different names
there's
depending
different
on.
names. They've all
Yeah,
named the cat their own thing. Yes, yes,
yeah. I
yes,
thought
yes,
clever cat.
yes, exactly.
Just get the best from
Get the
everyone.
best from everyone. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Um, so book two. Did you write this book recently, or when
Yes,
did you
I
be?
wrote it. I wrote it last year.
Great. So I was just thinking, because some authors, especially if there's a trilogy or things going on, they might have started this in lockdown. So I wondered, did the routes that Alan and Pretty Boy and other characters take? Have you walked these routes or driven
Yes.
these routes? Are they?
Yes, I definitely have. Yes, I have.
Yeah,
I definitely have, and I can, and it sort of helps me with my writing, and that I can sort of see it, I know the corners. I know, I know the streets. I know the buildings actually.
yeah,
Even the buildings that Alan lives in, it's a real building, that I've walked past, and a couple of the buildings I've been in, and it's just because as I said, I went through a stage where I was just a voyeur. I just went everywhere. I just
yeah,
took my time, walked around, and I enjoyed it. So it's just all those. It's just it's exactly this is my homage to my London.
yeah.
That's about it's how I feel about London. So yeah,
It very much comes across in the writing.
thank you.
And I think what it does as well, again, it's another one of those elements that moves this story along. Their motion, their journeys, and it takes us along. Um, I, we've talked so much, and I don't want to keep you from your family. But there was a part in the book that made me tremendously sad. Although given a recent FA Cup
Oh,
tie final, then it wasn't so bad. But you had to slip in Arsenal's win over Man
w-
City.
I did.
You
Oh,
did, didn't
absolutely, I
you? Yeah, you
did.
did.
Yeah,
You
I did.
did.
I did. I did.
Are you a Gunners fan?
No, I'm a United fan, but I
Oh,
know.
sorry.
I
Whoops.
know. I'm hiding now. But yeah, I'm a Man United fan, and yeah, I know. It's a bit of a weird one in that with Man City is, I don't really have that, much animosity towards Man City. It's just like, they're better than everyone. So, when we lose, we lose. What team do you support?
Man City.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
sorry. Yeah, my mum brought me up a Man City fan, or because of my years in the Northeast, then Newcastle, who
Yeah,
I'm
fair enough.
amazed at what they've achieved.
I
You
know,
know,
but both
yeah,
teams that I'm gonna hate for a while now because
yeah,
Newcastle have Saudi money and oh my God, it's a difficult topic to be fair. But I think initially during Mancini days and whatnot, I used to hate City.
mm,
But I think with Pep, it's just you I think you would hurt yourself if you hate City because they're just too good. So you just have to. We got our trophy, and you guys made sure Arsenal didn't win. So thank you for that, because I would not be able to survive as a Londoner
yeah.
if Arsenal won. So
Yeah.
so kind of thing.
It sort of
That's
worked it
it.
out. It sort of
Yeah,
worked it out.
don't work yourself
Yeah,
up. Yes.
yeah. Anyway, sorry, we digressed a little bit from the book. So if you'll allow me to ask you a final question, um, and I often ask this to authors, but I wonder what it is that you would. I mean, I know for each reader, it's our own experience and how we react to the book, but is there something that you particularly would like us to take away from book two?
I think you sort of phrased the question fantastically. I'm like, yes, I want people to enjoy it, and I want you to, like the characters, but I also want you, as you've mentioned already, which made me very happy at the beginning, to just feel the diversity of it. You know what I mean? Feel the diversity of of London, of the characters, and just understand that this is all wrapped up in one world, in one fantastic book, one good book that you've enjoyed, and these are all real characters interacting, and even you know. There are those parts where, because I try not to be on the nose with it, the parts where people make racist remarks, and there's a there's a racist tax on the word, and just stuff like that. And you just realize that it's you know we can all, even in crime, they can all live together, and it is what it is, and you just understand. And I think I told you this in the first place, and that the first book, the cover of the first book has a black person on it, Initially, I didn't want to be any race on it. So I wanted you to get to the end before you realize it was a
Yeah.
black person, because I just wanted you to realize that the aspects of you in that character, the things that you appreciate, the things you recognize from other people you've
Mm.
grown up with that are not black, that are Asian, that are white, that are whatever. And then you just sort of realize that the struggle, we all have those struggles, we all have those thrills, we all have those emotional moments. And that is probably what I want to put across. I know it's difficult for me to say that and write a book where, gangland and everybody dies. But ultimately, when you meet me, you sort of realize that, at the
Yes.
end of the day, I am
Yeah.
a pacifist, and I do want everybody to get along. And in my own way, that'd be it, I suppose. So that is what I want people to take from it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank
One
you very
last
much.
comment from me. Probably one of the best final sentences that I've ever read in a book. It's just like, oh my God,
God,
okay, yeah.
I know,
It
yeah.
just,
Thank you.
you can just feel the ominous music behind.
Yeah,
Really beautiful way to finish.
thank you very much.
Again, I thank you so much for your writing, the style that you've created, and your characters. And I would say for anybody who thinks Gangland, I'm not sure, I don't like that. It's not. I'd ask you to step back a little bit and just give these books a go. Um, because before you know it, you'll say, enjoyed that. I don't admit it, but I enjoyed it. Is it? Yeah,
No, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you
I
very much.
wish you all the very best with Let's Hold It Up
Thank
Again,
you.
because it's superb. A good
Thank you.
night to kill. And when time allows, I hope our paths cross. Uh,
Absolutely. I hope so too.
yeah. Thank you so much. Bye for
Thank
now.
you.
Bye.
Bye.